Furious Driving, proud to be supported by Diamond Bright, protecting, cleaning and caring for the Furious fleet and for yours, with 10% off using code FD10. Follow the links in the description below. Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and today I'm driving an SUV. Well, not the modern take of an SUV, the real take on an SUV, a proper sport utility vehicle. This is not a Mini Moke, this is not a Citroen Mehari, this is a Renault Rodeo, potentially the only one in the UK. And this car is actually for sale, so if you're interested, check the link in the description below. Now before we crack on, I just got to say this important thing: if you like reviews of interesting, unusual, rare vehicles, and emphasis on the unusual today, then please do hit like and subscribe and check out the back catalogue of Goes for a Drive, because there's plenty more where this came from. Now on with the review. Now back in the swinging 60s where everything was groovy and fun, it seemed like a good idea to take a small car and do wacky things with it. To the extent that you might be thinking this is a rip-off of the Citroen Mehari, that incredible 2CV Diane-based beach buggy thing. Or of course the Mini Moke, the stripped down, potentially military but great fun on the beach Austin. You might think that Renault were ripping off Citroen with the Mehari, which was incredibly popular. But in fact, it's the other way around, because the precursor to this, the Renault 4 Plein Air, which is a bit like the Fiat 500 Gamine, but based on a Renault 4, predates the Mehari by a day. However, in the time it took Citroen to shift 20,000 cars, Renault had only shifted 600. So that was dealt with tout de suite. Now driving this thing is surprisingly easy. Being Renault 4 based, it is astonishingly simple to drive naturally. Got the 4-speed gearbox, which is a little unusual with this strange umbrella handle, but that really is the only tricky factor. It's a 4-speed gearbox, of course, and mechanically everything was lifted straight out of the Renault regular family cars. Now, not including the Plein Air, or Fresh Air, there were 3 versions of the Rodeo. There was this, which is the Rodeo 4, which ran from 1970 to 1981. Then there was the Rodeo 6, which ran from 1972 to 1987, so concurrently. And then in 1981, there was an all-new version with completely different revised bodywork and bigger engines, which ran from 1981 to 1987. And of course, there are a few different trim levels as well, because you could spec this in absolute poverty farmer mode up to pretty luxurious. Well, pretty being a relative term. There was even a proper off-road all-wheel drive version, a proper SUV called the Hogger, but that was owned 1 year only in 1984. Now Renault do actually have a bit of a history of other companies making some of their most interesting cars for them. Look at things like the Aventime. This was manufactured by ACL, and in fact up until 1976 it was actually badged as the ACL Rodeo. It does even still wear ACL badges on its flank. Right, so something you might have noticed when I was driving on the road, it's left-hand drive, and that's because they all were. Now looking at the car, you can sort of see how it was, well, basically Renault 4 derived. The scale is just there, it's got the dimensions, but also squint and you can sort of feel a bit of Renault 4-ness, but all that is the Renault 4 chassis. On top of it is this, not made of metal, body shell, which was created and assembled, in fact the entire car was assembled by ACL, or Ateliers de Construction de Livradois, something. Atelier de Construction de Livradois. I couldn't quite read my own writing. But it's very, very simple and basic. The idea is it is little more than a farm vehicle, but a fun farm vehicle that you can take to the beach. This roof will obviously come off, the entire thing will come off. You can see how the framework at the back allows for a canvas contraption, very Heath Robinson, to be applied to it. There's even a footstep in the side so you can climb up and do that kind of thing. Like on the Renault 4, we've got a little notch in the side and a push button to open the door. That's simple. Sliding windows rather than wind-up windows. Everything is simple and basic, and this is a curiosity I hadn't realised I was going to find today. There's no bonnet put under the dashboard, just these latches on the front that let you get into the bonnet area, onto the engine. Now, like on the Renault 4, the engine is pushed right back against the firewall. We've got our bottle jack and our handle over there as well. And the radiator, the tiny weeny thing, pushed all the way at the front. And the gearbox is slung out ahead of the engine, which is quite a curious arrangement. You can see this rod here for the gear shifter, which goes all the way across the top of the engine, supported by this cross member and straight down. You may remember the little beige Renault 4 we did a while ago at Stone Cold Classics. Obviously the same arrangement because same firewall, same engine. So there are a number of different engine options across the years. The 4 Rodeo was initially available with an 845cc 4-cylinder. Later on, the Rodeo 6 had the 1100 from the Renault 6. Then later on still, everything got the 1289cc badged 1300 from the Renault 5. But this, though, being a 1976 4, is an 850cc. And to give you some idea of the power output on this thing, the 1100 made 34 horsepower. And this is less than that. This car does have the rather nice addition of some Alpine wheels that someone has decided to add to it over the years. Right, stepping inside the Rodeo, as I say, a little push button, which does have a lock as well because it's so important to secure your vehicle at all times. Yeah, before we climb into the car though, let's have a look at this door. It is oh so simple. We've got the body colour moulding of the door inside there. We've got a just simple strap to pull it shut. We've got a parts bin Renault 4, I expect, door handle. You can undo this little wheel here and lift out this entire window frame so that if you want to have fully open, flat fronted, because this windscreen will undo and fold forward as well, or lift off, depending on the model. And just a little padded area screwed on there to give you access to the workings of the door, such that they are. And stepping in, you do have this curious little door step where it gets quite wide around the B-post, where I guess there's some strengthening, and very narrow down here, but you can see the chassis legs that the car is built around as well. Inside, like on many other utilitarian vehicles of all eras in fact, we've got a rubber mat floor which is easy to sort of hose out, wipe clean, that kind of thing. And you'll notice, because we've got the high level gear shift, a big flat floor, so lots of storage, lots of space. If you wanted to squeeze 3 people across the front, you probably could. Now, starting up top, we don't have a magnificent tea shelf. There is nowhere for your cup of tea, your small coffee, but there is somewhere for 3 cigarette smokers. What appears to be 3 ashtrays across the top of the dashboard. Some might call them air vents, but this is France in the 60s, so I'm going to go with 3 ashtrays at this point. There is a small sub tea shelf, ideal for a tiny croissant or 2, and a very large lower tea shelf, which is perhaps a little impinging on the toe area, ideal for many other pieces of delightful baked goods. Now on the left hand side of the dashboard, we've got the simplest instrument layout you've ever did see. We have got a brake check / warning, we've got our wiper rocker, we've got our hazard light rocker, and we've got this, which I suspect is probably our washers. Yes, it is. It's vacuum plunger operated. Oh my goodness, wow, that's not even electric. Next to that, we have got our delightful dinky little instrument binnacle taken from the Renault parts bin, which is so simple. A tiny little strip fuel gauge with a descending needle. That lovely kind of stylized 1970s maths textbook kind of graph for the speedometer, which is in kph, by the way, going all the way to 140 kph. And we've got this markers saying what gear you should be in at these speeds. 80 kph is when you change out of third. And this thing's only done 61,000 kilometers, which is really nothing very much at all indeed. And it's made by Jaeger as well. We've also got our rear screen heater warning, apparently. Okay. Our oil warning, our indicator warning, headlights, hazards, that kind of thing, and our temperature and battery warning. The steering wheel is badged Renault, and of course it is lifted straight from something else in the range, probably a Renault 6, I think. But we have got, I think, maybe aftermarket additions to the car. I don't think this is how it came from the factory. Wooden ends on our control stalks, the handbrake, which is like the pull-out type handbrake down here, indicator on the right, and of course our umbrella gear shift over here on the right. And in the centre, I suspect this is the same person who throughout this car's life has made small modifications, because it's the kind of car that gets small mods. Add this little wooden plinth with BMW badged voltmeter and clock. So that's nice little additions that this car has got as well. I mentioned the T-shelves. We've also got a heater. Now that you might think isn't too much to write home about. Where's the aircon? The heater wasn't standard on this car. Now let me just talk you through the range options. Now, there are a few different trim levels on the Rodeo, making it possible to make it the car you really want it to be. Starting at a base level of the Evasion, which had 2 seats, no roof, no heater. That was as basic as it got. Perfect for working on the farm or heading down the beach. Next up was the Chantier, which is like a trader's market type version because it had a part length fabric top and only a driver's seat. So no passenger seat, just more room for your stock to go to market. More room for eggs and chickens perhaps to go across the field. Next up was the Coursière, which had a full length fabric top and seats. So that was quite nice, but no sides. And finally, if you're feeling very plush, or swish I guess you would say, you had the Quatre Saisons, the 4 seasons, which I think this might actually be one of because it had a proper roof, 2 seats and a heater and sides. You could use this thing all year round. But despite all that, it wasn't a fantastic seller, partly perhaps because the looks are interesting to say the least. It's not like a pretty attractive thing like the Mehari or cute like the Moke. It's a little more aggressive and confrontational, slightly odd looking at the front. And secondly, there's the price. At launch it was 10,347 francs, which is 2,000 more francs than a Mehari, which is really going to hurt your sales, isn't it? Now around the back of the car it is still more frugality, practicality and just being a useful all-round workhorse type vehicle. SUVs back in the day were designed to earn a living rather than try and look cool outside a coffee shop. It has a single tailgate which is opened with these little twiddly knob things just here, and that just drops down and hangs there, so presumably you can sit on there, and then you've got a big flat loading area. Almost looks wide enough for a Euro pallet. And there's a little drop down at the front of the area, taken I guess from the Renault 4 chassis, because that would be the footwell for the rear passenger seats. And there is really no reason you couldn't put a Renault 4 rear bench seat in the back of this and turn it into a 4-seater. It even has the indents and the latch areas where the Renault 4 rear seat would actually mount. And that would be a fun little beach car, wouldn't it? Now with a little tiny engine up front, this one I believe is the 850. There was later an 1100 and a 1300. It's not exactly what you'd call brisk, and hills are something of a challenge. Can I go to 4th? Yeah, no. But it is incredibly simple mechanically. It's all a mix of Renault 4 chassis and Renault 6 running gear, so really, really tough, basic, reliable stuff that it's easy to work on. And with no weight in it, it just flows through corners like a little, it's a beach buggy. Like with the Moke and the Mehari, there were some crazy ideas about turning it into like a military vehicle of some kind, but it never really came to anything because honestly, it's not going to do much against a tank, is it? Now the thing about cars like this is that in the right weather conditions they are absolutely brilliant and they'll put nothing but put a smile on your face. The trouble is though, when you hit the darker parts of the month, when the fact you've got an optional heater becomes apparent, then it becomes maybe less of a joy to be piloting. And the gear change is typical Renault 4. Slightly rubbery, but mostly positive. So using the Renault 4 umbrella type gear shift is really easy, same as a Citroen 2CV. So first is left and forwards, and away we go. Second, straight back. Third, back to the middle, slight to the right and forwards. Fourth, all the way back again. And reverse, when the car is stopped, all the way to the right and all the way back. So driving is really easy. You've got incredible visibility in every direction, even straight up if you take the roof off. Steering, obviously unassisted, is incredibly light. I've only got one mirror on the outside, it's on the driver's door, which is not much use being a left-hand drive car. The brakes, with no weight to stop, they do pull up the car pretty quickly. I have noticed that the speedometer is in kilometres per hour. But we're in the countryside, so that's probably fine. Aside from that, there aren't too many switches to worry about. Now, although it's only a 2-wheel drive, not an actual SUV, it's more SUV than most modern SUVs that are trying to be SUVs actually are. I mean, you can actually go places in it. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this ride out in this absolutely fabulous little tiny Renault Rodeo. It's bizarre, it's quirky, it's weird, and honestly, I think it's kind of brilliant. If you would like to make it your own, check the email in the description below. I'll remove it when the car sells. And it could be yours. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please, as always, hit like and subscribe, and join us again next time driving something completely different.